Hello, my amazing children. This is Grandma Carla, and I am back with the Swiss Family Robinson. We are on Chapter 8, The Journey to the Wonderful Trees. Next morning, while we breakfast, I made a little speech to my sons on the subject of the important move we were about to make, wishing to impress them with a sense of the absolute necessity of great caution. Remember, said I, that although you all begin to feel very much at your ease here, we are yet complete strangers to a variety of dangers which may surprise us unawares. I charge you, therefore, to maintain good order and keep together on the march. No darting off into byways, Jack. No lingering behind to philosophize, Ernest. And now, all hands to work. The greatest activity instantly prevailed in our camp. Some collected provisions, others packed kitchen utensils, tools, ropes, and hammocks, arranging them as burdens for the cow and the donkey. My wife pleaded for a seat on the ladder for her little France, and assured me likewise that she could not possibly leave the poultry even for a night, nor exist an hour without her magic bag. I agreed to do my best to please her, without downright cruelty to the animals. Away ran the children to catch the cocks and the hens. Great chasing, fluttering, and cackling ensued, but with no success whatever until the mother recalled her panting sons. Then, scattering some handfuls of grain within the open tent, she soon decoyed the fowls and the pigeons into the enclosure, where, when the curtain was dropped, they were easily caught, tied together, and placed on the cow. This amiable and phlegmatic animal had stood calmly chewing her cud, while package after package was disposed on her broad back. Nor did she now object even to this noisy addition to her load. I placed a couple of half-hoops over all, and spreading sailcloth on them, put the fowls in darkness, and they rapidly became quiet. And the cow, with the appearance of having a small wagon on her back, was ready to start. France was firmly seated on the donkey, amidst bags and bundles of all sorts and sizes. They rose about him like cushions and pillows, and his curly head rested on the precious magic bag, which surmounted all the rest. Having filled the tent with the things we were leaving behind, closing it carefully and ranging chest and cask around it, we were finally ready to be off, each well equipped and in the highest spirits. Fritz and his mother led the van. France and the sober-minded cow followed them closely. Jack conducted the goats. One of these also had a rider, for Nips, the monkey, was seated on his foster mother, whose patience was sorely tried by his restlessness and playful tricks. The sheep were under Ernest's care, and I brought up the rear of this patriarchal band, while the dogs kept constantly running backward and forward in the character of aides-de-camp. We seem delightfully like those simple and pastoral tribes I have read of, said Ernest as we proceeded, whose whole lives were spent in shifting from place to place, without any wish to settle. With honest pride, I introduced my wife to my bridge, and we passed over it in a grand procession, reinforced unexpectedly on the opposite side by the arrival of our cross-grained old cow, Sow. The perverse creature had obstinately resisted our attempts to bring her with us, but, finding herself deserted, had followed us on her own accord, testifying in the most unmistakable manner, by angry grunts and squeals, her entire disapproval of our proceedings. I soon found we must, as before, turn down to the sea beach, for not only did the rank grass impede our progress, but it also tempted the animals to break away from us. But for our watchful dogs, we might have lost several of them. On the firm, open sands, we were making good way when, to my annoyance, both our dogs suddenly left us, and springing into the thick cover at our right, commenced to furious barking, followed by howling as if in fear or violent pain. Not for a moment doubting that some dangerous animal was at hand, I hastened to the spot, remarking as I went the characteristic behavior of my 3 sons. Fritz cocked his gun and advanced boldly, but with caution. Ernest looked disconcerted and drew back, but got ready to fire, while Jack hurried after Fritz without so much as unslinging his gun from his shoulders. Before I could come up with them, I heard Jack shouting, "Father, father, come quickly! A huge porcupine! A most enormous porcupine!" Sure enough, the dogs were rushing round and round a porcupine, and having attempted to seize it, were already severely wounded by its quills. Each time they came near, the creature, with a rattling noise, bristled up his spines. Somewhat to my amusement, while we were looking at the curious defense this creature was making, little Jack stepped close up to it, with a pocket pistol in his hand, and shot it dead, making sure of it by a couple of heavy raps on the head. Then, giving way to a burst of boyish exultation, he called upon us to help to convey his prize to his mother. This was by no means easy to do. Sundry attempts resulted in bloody fingers, till Jack, taking his pocket handkerchief and fastening one corner around its neck, ran off, dragging it after him to where his mother awaited us. "Hello, Mother, here's a jolly beast, isn't it? I shot it, and it's good to eat. Father says so." I only wish you had seen how it terrified the dogs, and heard the rattling and the rustling of its spines. "Oh, it is a fearful creature." Ernest, examining it carefully, pronounced its incisors' teeth, its ears and feet to resemble those of the human race, and pointed out the curious crest of stiff hairs on its head and neck. "Were you not afraid, Jack," asked I, "lest the porcupine should cast some of its quills like darts at you?" "Of course not," returned he. "I know well enough that is nothing but a fable." "A fable?" said I. "Why, look at your mother. She is drawing 5 or 6 spines out of each of the dogs." "Ah, those stuck into them when they so fiercely fell upon it in their attack. Those are the short quills, and seem very slightly fixed in its skin. The long quills bent aside when Juno pressed against them." "You are perfectly right, my boy," said I. "There is no truth in the old idea of shooting out the spines. But now, shall we leave this prickly booty of yours, or attempt to take it with us?" "Oh, please, Father, let us take it. Why, it is good to eat." Smiling at the child's eagerness, and willing to please him, I made a somewhat awkward bundle of the porcupine, wrapping it in several folds of cloth, and adding it to the donkey's load. Our party then resumed the march, which, with little interruption, was continued steadily until we came into the sight of our future place of residence. The wonderful appearance of the enormous trees and the calm beauty of the spot altogether fully came up to the enthusiastic description which had been given me, and my wife gladly heard me say that, if the abode could be contrived among the branches, it would be the safest and most charming home in the world. We hastily unloaded the donkey and the cow, securing them, as well as the sheep and the goats, by tying their 4 feet loosely together. The doves and the poultry were set at liberty, and we sat down to rest among the soft herbage while we laid our plans for the night. Ernest, meanwhile, was fetching large flat stones in order to form a fireplace, while France gathered sticks, as his mother was anxious to prepare some food. "What sort of a tree do you suppose this to be, Father?" inquired Ernest, seeing me examining them from which we were encamping. "Is not the leaf something like the walnut?" "There is a resemblance, but in my opinion these gigantic trees must be mangroves or wild figs. I have heard their enormous height described, and also the peculiarity of the arching roots supporting the main trunk raised above the soil." Just then little France came up with a large bundle of sticks, and his mouth full of something he was eating with evident satisfaction. "Oh, Mother," cried he, "this is so good, so delicious. "Greedy little boy," exclaimed she in fright. "What have you got there? Don't swallow it, whatever you do. Very likely it is poisonous. Spit it all out this minute." And the anxious mother quickly extracted from the rosy little mouth the remains of a small fig. "Where did you find this?" said I. "There are thousands lying among the grass yonder," replied the little boy. "They taste very nice. I thought poison was nasty. Do you think they will hurt me? The pigeons and the hens are gobbling them up with all of their might and main, Papa." "I think you have no cause for alarm, dear wife," I said. "The trees seem to be the fig-bearing mangrove of the Antilles. But remember, France, you must never eat anything without first showing it to me. Never mind how good it seems. If birds and monkeys eat a fruit or vegetable, it is usually safe to believe it is wholesome," added I, turning to the other boys, who, instantly taking the hint, coaxed France to give them the figs he still had in his pocket, and ran to offer them to Nips, who was closely watching the skinning of the porcupine, apparently giving his opinion on the subject with much chattering and gesticulation. "Here, Nips, allow me to present you with a fig," cried Jack, holding out one to the funny little creature. Nips took it readily, and after turning it about and sniffing it and smelling it, he popped it into his mouth with such a droll grimace of delight and satisfaction that the boys all laughed and clapped their hands, crying, "Bravo, Nips! You know a good thing when you see it, don't you? Old fella, hurrah!" My wife, with her mind set at the rest on the question of figs, now continued her preparations for dinner. The flesh of part of the porcupine was put on the fire to boil, while we reserved the rest for roasting. I employed myself in contriving needles for my wife's work by boring holes at one end of one of the porcupine quills, which I did by means of a red-hot nail, and I soon had a nice packet of various sizes, which pleased her immensely. I also laid plans for making proper harness for the beast of burden, but could not attempt to begin that while so many wants more pressing demanded attention. We examined the different trees and chose one which seemed most suited to our purpose. The branches spread at a great height above us, and I made the boys try if it were possible to throw sticks and stones over one of those, my intention being to construct a rope ladder if we could once succeed in getting a string across a strong bough. Finding we could not succeed in that way, I resolved other schemes in my mind, and meantime went with Jack and Fritz to a small brook close by, where I showed them how to place the porcupine skin to steep and soften in the water, with stones placed on it to keep it beneath the surface. That is the end of Chapter 8, The Journey to the Wonderful Trees. And let's see. No pictures in that one, but there's some pictures in the next chapter. The next chapter is the tree house. And this is Grandma Carla, and I love you.